Hello Bogota, I'm Brian Eno. So about 25 years ago, I started seeing films, usually in pop videos, of things morphing into other things. And also you used to see that in sort of superhero films as well, where people turned from one thing into a totally different thing. And there was also a thing with kids' toys, these toys called Transformers, which become something else. And I thought that was quite interesting. And then I thought, the problem is, as always in popular culture, everything is too fast. I really liked seeing those Michael Jackson films where he suddenly turned into something else. But the transition would happen in 3 or 4 or 5 seconds. And I thought, what would happen if you just took one picture of a human being and another of a different human being, and then you just very slowly change from one to the other, so imperceptibly, so you could never see the change happening. But after a while you thought, this is a different person. Oh, and there's another different person. So it was sort of an idea of, first of all, being able to see all the universe of people who've never existed, who could have existed. They're all they look feasible, they look like real people, but in fact, they've never existed, but they're just as real as the ones that have done. It's very difficult when you're watching these films, when you go from one face to another, to know when you're seeing the real face. You might see 2,000 other faces in between the two, but you don't know which is actually the real face. I made the first one of these in, I think, about 2003 or something like that. And it was very, very time intensive. I remember it took us 47 hours to render this quite short film. It was only about 6 minutes long. But I was really entranced by the idea that you could create all these new humans. And also I loved the transitions when it changed from, for instance, being a man to a woman, or from being a white person to a black person. And suddenly you saw all these other shades of gender and colour. I thought it was a very kind of optimistic view of mankind, that any one of us could very easily be any other one of us. It took such a long time to render these things in the computer that it wasn't easy to do experiments with it. It wasn't easy to try something and then think, oh, I'll try it a little bit differently. It meant 2 days rendering the bloody thing in the computer. And I remember the first render we did of that 6-minute piece, the computer crashed after about 42 hours, so we had to start all over again. So it was cumbersome then. In the last few years, though, computers have got much more powerful, and actually these morph programs have got much better as well. So it was possible to look at that again. And so, just to reiterate, what it consisted of was 21 faces, real people, photographed. So, and then morphing very slowly over a period of maybe 5 minutes from one face to the next one in the sequence, and then from that face to the next one in the sequence. So if you're thinking that we're working at, 30 frames a second, I guess, and each frame is actually a slightly different person, you can work out that that's a lot of people. I don't know how many, I haven't worked out. I then started showing this piece in various installations, and I found that a lot of the people watching it found it as interesting as I did. But once it started, and once you started grasping the idea that this was a continually changing face, you sort of wanted to hang on in and see what would happen to it. What will it become next? The choice of faces was fairly random. The first one I did in the early part of this century was, I just went to the corner of the road here and I would ask people if they wouldn't mind me taking a picture of them. So they would come and walk back to my studio and I'd take a picture and say thanks a lot and see you again. This one we did a little bit more, with a little bit more control, because one of the problems with the other ones is that there were too many variables in the picture and it started to get a little bit distracting. So we sort of standardized the setting in this case, standardized the lighting, and allowed people a little bit of freedom. They didn't have to sit rigidly in one position, but you'll see there are very small movements of the head sometimes. If we're morphing between somebody who's looking straight on, like that, and somebody who's got the head slightly turned, then you'll see that motion reflected over a period of 5 minutes or so. So this seems, since this is so figurative, it seems a little bit different from the rest of my work. But in fact, it shares the interest that I have in most of my work, in slowness, in time, in taking things that you might normally see at high speed, in a discotheque, for example, or in a pop video, and saying, what happens if we really slow it down to the point where you're not sure whether it's changing or not? This I think is very interesting, because I think it has a kind of effect on you as a viewer, that you slow down as well. The thing is moving very slowly, and you start to relax down to that speed, I think. So it has, for me, it has a psychological effect. It changes the speed at which I'm moving and working. Like a lot of the things I've done, it also uses a technology that people know about and does something with it that they don't usually do. So a lot of my work is based on looking at available technology and either subverting it by doing something with it that it wasn't supposed to do. An example of that would be playing a recording backwards, for example, or over-recording something so that it distorts in a certain way. But another example of that is just putting it into a different sort of speed reference, a different time reference. So, as I said earlier, nearly everything that people have ever done with morphs has been very, very fast, because it's dramatic. You know, it goes, wow, that's another face. As far as I'm concerned, there is actually quite enough drama in the world, and I don't want to add to it. I'm much happier to find the quiet drama of slow change, and that's what I would like to present to people.